Let's begin with the demo. Let's assume that the product management team is using the requirement management tool Jama and the verification team is using the verification tool Verisium Manager. Now the product manager has received the requirement related to wireless communication support via system on chip. For the same, couple of requirements are defined at the Jama side. If we take example, one could be the wireless communication via Bluetooth low energy system on chip. Now, along with this requirement, the product manager has defined few other details about the requirement such as description, acceptance criteria, priority, status, and so on. Now, the product manager thinks that this requirement can be completed by performing two major verification, which can be power consumption verification and frequency band verification. Then for the same, the sub-requirement related to power consumption verification and frequency band verification can be defined at the Jama side. Now we will go to Verisium Manager. We will refresh the Verisium Manager and we can see that there will be no requirements over here. So the verification engineer won't be knowing anything about these requirements until they are defined explicitly at this end. So to synchronize the data between requirement tool and verification tool, we are going to use OpsHub Integration Manager. Now we will go to OpsHub Integration Manager. Here we are going to activate the integration to synchronize the data from Jama to Verisium Manager. It will take couple of seconds to synchronize all the requirements from Jama to Verisium Manager. Meanwhile, we can go to Verisium Manager. We will wait for a few seconds and refresh the Verisium Manager to see the synchronized data. So we can see that the requirements from the Jama are synchronized as a section and subsection in Verisium Manager along with the same structure and details which were defined at the Jama side. For example, if we take the example of Bluetooth SoC, then the details, severity, acceptance criteria and status is same as what it was defined at the Jama side. Now along with these details, we can observe few other details. One is the entity ID of Jama requirement and another one is the link to that requirement. So with these details, the verification engineer will be able to determine the Jama requirement which is associated with this section. And if the engineer wants to navigate to that requirement, then this link can be used. So with the OpsHub Integration Manager, traceability between two different systems can be also achieved. Now, let's assume the power consumption verification requirement is assigned to a verification engineer. So, the verification engineer will update the status of this section to in progress. And while working on this requirement, the engineer thinks that this verification can be performed based on the different modes of Bluetooth, such as idle and active mode. So the engineer will further break down this section into further subsections. One could be active mode with the in progress status. And another one could be idle mode. Similarly with the in progress status. So, the verification engineer has now defined these sections into subsections. Over here, we can observe one thing. The requirements that are updated by the sync tool is having one flag raised at the icon level, and the requirements which are created, or let's say we can say lastly updated by the verification engineer, is not having this flag at the icon level. So with this flag, if the verification engineer wants to identify the updated requirement by the sync tool, then that can be also determined. If the verification engineer approves the changes from the sync tool, then this flag can be also cleared out from the UI. At the UI, the option of clear all flags will help you with that. So over here we can see that all the flags are now cleared out. So whenever the sync tool will update the entities furthermore, the flag will be again raised. So the verification engineer will be able to track the updated entities by the sync tool. Now as we have made the changes at the Verisium Manager side, it will be also available at the Jama side. We will go to Jama to see the same. Now we will refresh the Jama to see the latest changes from the Verisium Manager. So we can see that the subsections created at the Verisium Manager is now also available as a sub-requirement in Jama with the same details which is mentioned at the Verisium Manager side. We can see that in the requirement status, and also we can validate the status update which was performed at the Verisium Manager is also now available at the Jama side. Now let's say the product manager wants to update the description of active mode sub-requirement, then the manager can do same. Let's say we are updating it with have low power consumption, and we can save it. So the same changes will be also reflected at the Verisium Manager side. Now we will go to Verisium Manager. We will refresh the Verisium Manager to see the latest changes from the Jama. So if we select that active mode subsection, then it is having the same description that was updated at the Jama side. So whatever changes are being performed by the product team will be also available to the verification team. Now, the verification engineer has started the work upon this subsection. So the engineer will define the test case related to these sections. So let's define one test case related to active mode section, which could be current and voltage level validation. Similarly, for the idle mode, the test case could be low power state validation. And similarly, for the frequency band verification, the engineer has defined two different test cases. One could be 1.6 GHz frequency validation, and another one could be 2.1 GHz frequency validation. Now, for the demo purpose, we are going to assume that the verification engineer has already run the regression and the golden regression results are available into this matrix. So, the engineer will associate the relevant metrics with the relevant metric ports. Now all the metric ports are associated with the relevant metrics of the golden regression, but we can see that the details of verification metrics is not available at the metric port level, because in the Verisium Manager, the results of regression is not persisted into the database. So we will run a script to copy the results from verification metrics to the metric port in Verisium Manager. So now we will refresh the Verisium Manager. So we can see that at each metric port level, the verification result is also copied from the verification metrics. Now this same result will also get synchronized to Jama. And if we see at the Verisium Manager side, the result is also rolled up at the sections and subsections level. So the same result will be also available to the Jama as at the requirement level. Now we will go to Jama to see the latest changes from Verisium Manager. Now we will refresh the Jama to see the latest changes from Verisium Manager. So over here, we can see that all the test cases which are defined at the Verisium Manager side is also now available at the Jama side, along with all the verification metrics which are defined at the Verisium Manager side. And if we see, the rolled up result will be also available at the requirement level. We can see that over here the cumulative result is available. Now, if the product manager, based on this requirement result related to verification metrics, decide that this requirement cannot be passed because it is not having any passed runs. So, the manager can change the requirement status to draft. So, the verification engineer needs to rerun the regression for this sub-requirement. And if the product manager, based on the verification metrics, decides that this requirement is acceptable, then can update the status to publish. So the verification can be closed for this requirement. Now this updated changes will be also available at the Verisium Manager side. We will go to Verisium Manager to see the latest changes. We will refresh the Verisium Manager. As the product manager has rejected this requirement and set the status to draft, so the status draft is also available at the Verisium Manager side. And for the idle mode, we can see that the status is changed to publish as it was accepted by the product manager. So the changes from the product manager is also now available to the verification team. So this is how the synchronization between verification tool and requirement tool can be performed via OpsHub Integration Manager. Thanks for watching the demo.